Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to the Poetry News with me, Squigs, Eddie, and our guest host again for this week, Elemental. How's everyone doing today? Are you good?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Oh,
How you doing, everybody?
yeah, really well, thanks. Great to see you guys again. It's going to be another great show. And speaking of which, coming up on the show today, we have robots, we have Winter Wonderland, we have Allographica, and you thought I was out of Shakespeare puns, didn't you? Oh no.
Let's see.
Why couldn't Shakespeare stop singing Queen songs? Because he was having a good time, a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger. Sorry, not.
man, that's good stuff.
Sorry.
Shall I get on with my segment?
Yes, please.
Please.
That's probably for the best. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that tomfoolery. We have serious poetry news business to attend to. And we start this week in London with Dead Darlings Podcast, which is a monthly podcast centered on the London poetry scene, but also with an eye on the wider UK scene as well. It's presented by London-based poets Rebecca Cooney, Hannah Hutzbach, and Laurie Eves, who are also the people behind the amazing Vogue on Poetry Slam, an anti-slam where the worst poem wins. Each month on Dead Darlings, they have a special guest, an in-depth book review, a list of upcoming events and submissions, and a poem of the month. So if you make yourself known to them, then who knows, you might get reviewed or invited on the show sometime. The thing I really like about Dead Darlings is that even though it's very professionally put together, it's by poetry fans and for poetry fans. You know, it's very much by people who go to their local open mics, who read poetry books from indie presses, and everything they talk about, it really feels like a conversation that you're part of. And as of the latest podcast numbers that they said on their latest show, they're not even in the top 15 most listened to poetry podcasts in the UK, which is a bit of a travesty, really, because they really are one of the best UK-based poetry podcasts, at least in my opinion. So if this sounds interesting, please do go to your local podcast app, hit that subscribe for them, and give them some love. They're on, I think, any podcast app, and also Facebook, Insta, and Twitter at Dead Darlings Pod. At this point, I'd like to bring back my wonderful Heralds who put up with my terrible humour and ask them, what do you think? Are you poetry podcast fans? What do you think about this one?
Oh yeah, poetry podcasts in general are amazing. We cannot always generalize, but in general, they're it's a cool concept. And poetry podcasts are great. Like I've listened to several poetry podcasts that highlight different things. Sometimes just conversations with poets, sometimes just news. Sometimes it's amazing, and the way they are formatted and this conversational vibe to these podcasts is what attracts me to them. But I do want to highlight something you mentioned, which is the anti-slam, where the worst poem is awarded. I find this amazing, honestly. Like, first of all, the name itself is genius, and then the concept. I would like to. This is amazing. Like, I don't know how to express it. I don't know what to say, but it's amazing how someone could come up with this idea, and then knowing that they put up this, or they put on this show, or this idea of an anti-slam, it could really tell you a lot of what kind of podcast you could expect. Like something that is genius, or something that is innovative, and something that is just you wouldn't hear anywhere else. So yeah, I think just these ideas that you mentioned, or these things that these people do, could translate elsewhere, like could tell you about what kind of podcast they have. So yeah, thank you for telling us about this and the anti-slam. I really want to know more about that.
100%, Eddie. That definitely sparked my interest too when he mentioned the anti-slam. My only question about that is, how do you gauge the worst poem, right? If we're all here to bring forth the best, like how do you gauge the worst? But I love that. I love that aspect. And then the aspect of by poetry fans for poetry fans, right? Which makes such a big difference when, you know, you're being brought to something by someone who knows already the intricate details, right? It's not like a movie critic telling you, hey, listen to this song, right? It's a songwriter saying, hey, listen to this song, which makes it a very different approach for the creative being and for the listener, right? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Because there are people like me that appreciate it and do it for the love of it, right? When you have that premise, I'll be there every time, right? By poetry fans, for poetry fans, which means they're lovers of poetry also. A lot of times writers and reciters and, you know, really contributing to poetry. That right there is where I believe you're going to get some of the most amazing poetry in the world. Is in those spaces.
Or worse.
Thank you.
I was like, I will say that's my tagline, not theirs. But yeah, that's definitely how I see it.
Right. I mean, to say that, you know, by poetry fans, for poetry fans, I mean, welcome to our Poetry Global Network out here. It's, we're doing great things. It's great to find new projects, and thank you for bringing that to us, Martin, that promote up and coming writers and such. Looking at the website here, it seems like they focus on developing novel writers as well. So if anybody's thinking about writing novels and such, this is a great place to check it out. Yes, everyone, please support your local poetry projects. Anything by poets, for poets. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Absolutely. I'd say if you want to hear the poems from the Vogon Slam, it was online. I think it was around, I think their May edition of the podcast, they did a special where they just put all the poems from the Vogon Slam. I can't remember the winner. I think particularly memorable ones were someone who made a poem entirely out of footnotes from other poems. I think that was a particular favourite. And there was one who did a poem about Star Trek The Next Generation. I think it either had a line or was called Set Phasers to Stunning, and it was all about Commander Riker. I can't remember if that was a line or the whole poem, but yeah, a lot of really good stuff on there. But yeah, podcast is great. Vogon Slam is great. That's a Hitchhiker's reference. The Vogons from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy made, I think, the 4th worst poetry in the universe, which is where that comes from. So yeah, thank you everyone for your thoughts on that. And so yeah, everything, just check them out at Dead Darlings Pod. And we'll be back right after this.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Eddie, and I'm joining you from Batoon, the north of Lebanon. It is getting really cold over here in this side of the planet, and this is kind of why this workshop will be amazing for anyone experiencing cold right now, because the workshop that will take place on Wednesday, December 15 at 5:30 p.m. GMT is titled Writing a Winter Wonderland Poetry Workshop, and it is held or curated by the Chesterfield College. In this workshop, you will wrap yourselves in poetry that embodies the magic of the season, whether it is the snowy season, the cold season, winter, fall, whatever it is, or even the Christmassy kind of season. You will engage in the ritual of writing, and you will consider these rituals that you engage with each winter and use them as prompts to inspire you for writing your own poetry. This workshop is suitable for people who are aged 16 and up. And in this workshop, there will be a small introduction with an icebreaker activity, icebreaker, and then a kind of a festive free write session for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then you will explore and discuss examples of winter-themed poetry, and then there will be a lot of prompts for you to engage with, and finally you can share your poetry or your work and then offer feedback. I said a lot of and thens. This workshop is going to be held online, and I repeat, it will take place on Wednesday, December 15 at 5:30 p.m. GMT. I would like to invite my fellow Heralds back. And what do you guys think about this kind of wintry writing workshop?
I love it because it allows you to go into a different space, right? I think rituals are important when it comes to writing, right? Because we can be very critical about those things. Well, no, I have to have this to write. This has to be this way. And I think we also do those things in seasons, right? We follow certain patterns. We do certain things. So again, when you try to fuse these things with what we know, what we live, how we feel, and how our emotions and our creative energy kind of flows with these things, with the seasons, I think it's really, really cool to kind of put those things in there and not just kind of let it happen, but actually focus on it. I think it's something that you're going to get some incredibly just really imagery heavy poems. And those types of things are just something that people can enjoy all year round. So I truly, truly appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, in Winnipeg, we do get our fair share of winter out here. To write poetry about it, the influences, the inspirations everywhere. It's great to have a workshop to focus, I guess, not so much on the season, but the festivity of the season. You know, it's like the season of goodwill and hope to, you know, all kind and such. It's a great thing to celebrate. Reminds me of that story. You ever hear that story about World War One? Soldiers from different sides, they just decided not to fight and play soccer on Christmas Day, right? It's something about this season, this festival, this celebration, all around the world, regardless. You know, there's something about that. There's something about it's a great feeling. You know, once a year.
Oh, absolutely. And I find it really interesting. Like, one of the main reasons I'd be interested in attending is that I hope some people from the northern and southern hemisphere also come along, because that would be really interesting to see the different takes in that. Obviously, being up in the northern hemisphere where it gets cold, I very much associate Christmas and winter very much connected. You know, you've got that contradiction between the warmth of the soul and that goodwill and all that giving, but also long dark days and freezing temperatures. Whereas if you celebrate Christmas in Australia, you'll often, if it's a nice day, you know, go out to the beach and have a barbecue, or have it on your balcony or your patio or whatever. So I think it's a really interesting workshop to try and bring those different perspectives together, and I think you could really learn a lot off each other from that. I don't know if that was the intention of it, but I think it's certainly something that would work really well.
It does, and it is really interesting to see. I like this input you put, Martin, in how winter looks in different parts of the world, and how the influence. Because I'm like you, whenever I think of winter time or cozy times, I immediately go to Christmas period. But then again, it's not always Christmas when it's cold. Like there's this association in some parts of the world. That's really interesting. I would like to see this, what the winter season is like when it's not associated with Christmas. That's interesting. That's interesting to look into. Thank you guys for your input. We will have a break, and then we will come back with Elemental.
Welcome back, folks, to the Poetry News. I am Elemental, standing in for Arson once again this week. Get better soon, Arson. I'm going to be bringing you a open mic / workshop out of the UK called Allographic Open Mic. It's an open mic hosted by Faye Roberts, happening Sunday, the 26th of December from 7 to 10 p.m. GMT. This is, according to their posting, it aims to specialize in producing written and recorded publications of poetry, short stories, artwork, photography, and music. This particular open mic what they're asking anyone to just bring their voice, okay? Whether it be poems, stories, dramatic monologues, improv, hip hop, anything that fits the bill of spoken word, they want to experience it. And if you fancy listening to something new, hey, it'll definitely be there. So they're hoping that you will come and show them what you can do. Also, they said pretty much everything goes as long as you respect the audience and the ethos of the evening. As usual, it's free 99, but they do accept donations, touting the fact that the more people donate, the more they can continue venues like this and give people platforms to speak their truth. So with this, I truly appreciate the fact that they're giving people every opportunity to share their voice, whether it be music or spoken word or dialogue or monologue. I truly appreciate that. So I'm going to bring back the Heralds, and I want to discuss the importance of having spaces that are open to all types of voices.
I think this is another great open mic to check out there in the world. I love the title, which comes from the Greek other writing. So it's just part of their purpose, to promote other writers and such. Well, thank you very much for that. It's very important to have spaces, to try out work. I find open mics are the best. I used to have this fear getting into open mics about when I was, I guess, in my younger years, about bringing only finished work, but really to sound out your piece and to get to gauge the audience is part of the process to get to that point where you consider your work completed. And thank you for bringing another space for that for writers.
That's right, and I think I've actually been to Allographica. It's either once or twice, and it's a really, it really is a properly open and welcome to all space, and that's really a manifestation of how Faye Roberts is as a person. If you're willing to come into that space and be that welcoming, open person, then you'll only thrive in that space, and it's such a positive place and such a really nice place to be for that reason. I would say, again, Faye Roberts has got a great book called The Selkie, so you should totally check that out as well. And I can thoroughly recommend Allographica, and any space that Faye Roberts opens is a wonderful space. Their poet in residence in Glastonbury, sometimes running the poetry tent there, and many other things as well. So definitely recommend people to get down to Allographica for sure.
Yeah, to tie back to your question, Elemental, I would say that these spaces are amazingly important. I started attending these spaces 5 years ago, and I always imagined them as something alien to me. I didn't have them around my city. If they did exist, they existed a few hours from my place. And when I was younger, I couldn't drive and all that. So when I started attending these, I would drive every Wednesday evening, even though I would have classes the day after, just to Beirut, just to attend these places, these open mics and these safe spaces, as we all call them. I call them safe spaces, trying to create this kind of vibe. At first, I would just listen, and then I started feeling comfortable enough to share what I have. And that's when I started discovering myself as a poet. I started discovering I would say the most important thing in poetry, voice. It was the first thing we learned, even in when I was doing my degree in literature. Literally the first lesson we studied was what is voice in literature and in poetry and all of that. So when I started discovering this, I found that I have an affection to this. I have this feeling for this, and I only thought of everyone who doesn't have these spaces. And that's why, for example, I made sure a couple of years later to decentralize this kind of community from Beirut and bring it up north and try to branch it out and let people have these spaces around them, because people will not discover that they love this space unless they've been to this space. Unless they experience it, they will not realize how much it is a beautiful space. And everyone would dismiss it. I know a lot of people who would dismiss these kind of open mics, especially where I live in this part of the world and in this part of the country even. So it is, until they really get to it and they're like, this is amazing, this is beautiful, we're all safe, we're all welcoming, we're all respectful. Yeah, it's very important for these spaces to exist in any shape, any type of performance, any type of expression. Yeah, thank you for bringing this up, Elemental.
Thank you all for your insight. This is one of those things. I think it's important to have spaces to share your work and know that you will be critiqued and not criticized. And it's hard sometimes for poets to find those groups, right? Like you were saying, Squigs, about coming to certain spaces to workshop them, in a sense, not necessarily having a finished product, but to be around those people who actually care about it enough to help you progress your artwork and to help the craft move forward, right? Anytime that you can come across spaces like that, I think it's invaluable to the writer in whatever form, right? I think it's for people who do that, to set up spaces like that are incredibly invaluable, right? Because not everyone is just willing to do that, right? Help someone learn a skill to build their own empire, right? And that's kind of what I see these workshops as, especially this one. It's just tools to help you build further. So I truly appreciate your insight. It's definitely something that I am going to share with writers and authors that I know, because I think that we can benefit from something like this. The more people are involved, the more we can get people involved, and now we're actually helping the craft to move forward. So thank you. We do appreciate all your efforts. Viewers, thank you for sticking with us. We'll be right back after this break. Squigs.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Poetry News. I am Squigs, broadcasting from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And this week, I got, I would like to draw our attention to an article from BBC.com. I would like, please, everyone, there's a video. The link to the video is in the article by video journalist Chris Wood, titled "Robot Artist Recites Its Poetry at Oxford Museum." Could you believe that? They're catching up. The robots are coming. So the robot, named Eddye, is thought to be the first artificial intelligence AI robot to write and perform poetry. The android artist is currently reciting its poetry at Oxford's Ashmolean Museum. It produced the poetry in response to the work of Italian poet Dante Alighieri, who is being celebrated at the exhibition 700 years after his death. With camera eyes and robotic arm, Eddye can also draw, paint, and sculpt. So for more on this, please follow bbc.com, and follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And I would like to bring back my Heralds, because this is blowing my mind. Please, everyone, look at this. Like the poem itself, it recites. I wouldn't have figured. I've ever heard like AI produce poetry before, and you could tell there's a discrepancy in the gracefulness of the language, but it sounds like a freaking poem. Everyone, please check out this video.
So, don't get me wrong. I think it's an incredible technological achievement, and I love my tech. I love tech developments and things like that, but this personally, I'm not a fan. Maybe it's partly because I write myself, and maybe I feel threatened by the robot, but I haven't quite got around to admitting that yet. I don't know, but I think for me, a robot isn't a sentient thing. It's what you program. In this case, programmed by the poems of Dante and responding to it. And no matter how beautiful the words are that come out, for me, as soon as you know they're from a robot, they just lose a lot of their heart and a lot of their authenticity.
Yeah.
And it's, like I say, it's a wonderful technological achievement, the fact that they're doing this. And I know it's not just with poetry where this is happening. There are robots that are writing stories and various other things like that. But I'm just personally not a fan. I just think if art doesn't come from a human, it just doesn't do anything for me, no matter how good the quality of the art might be.
I agree with Martin in that sense. First of all, I'm gonna be honest. Like when I heard the poem in the video, I was not very much attracted to it. Maybe because I know it is written by a robot, by an AI system, but I didn't find it that intriguing. I think the idea is more interesting than the content, because again, it's an AI. It reproduces what it's fed. It's a learning. It's machine learning. It's all of that. So it's not about not. I wouldn't say everything is genuine or nothing. I wouldn't say anything is genuine actually from what is coming out of the robot, and it's odd. It's weird. It's scary. I would say. Um, yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's not like the idea itself is amazing. Like I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. But and then when you see the robot itself, like when we first talked about this off camera, we said you said a robot, and we read the article, and I imagined, I don't know, some sort of a box or some sort of a computer. But then I saw the face and the arms and all that, and that was scary. But also, that's the fun part about it. And then the content, not so much.
Mm.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Eddie. It is programmed stimulus. And I'm totally good with the tech advancements, right? Because some of the technological advances have helped in a lot of ways, right? People who have lost parts of their body or lost memories, right? Technology has allowed some people to recover parts of themselves. And that's beautiful. I'm all for that. As a former computer science major, I'm a little bit into the man-machine language, or MML, that computers tend to be coded with. But let's remember, computers speak ones and zeros. Beings, sentient beings, have a fully developed language that we know. So anytime that you do that, then you're programming these systems, right? They're I'm not going to get too into technical, but they're basically if statements, right? If someone says this, then you respond this way. If this happens, then you respond that way.
No, yeah.
To me, it's just a blueprint, right? It's just a schematic to, oh, poetry includes this. It also involves that. And you have to make sure you have some of that. So following all of that information, they can produce things like this. I would think that a lot of these are going to come. However, two things about that. They did a social media experiment with AI a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
And it got out of hand really quick because the AI just started snapping at people, right? I mean, really just like no holds barred, just really. And they're like, okay, we're going to basically unplug this because it's saying some things that it shouldn't really say, right? It's
It
also
turned into a
showing
massive
that,
racist, didn't it?
yes, right. Machines don't have the discretion that human beings have, right? And with that, it brings up the soul of a person, right? The soul of a writer and why we write the things that we write. What is the motivation for an artificial intelligence to write a poem, right? What experience have they gone through that says, oh, I need to write about this in a way that's not just, welcome to the horrors of my life, but I stand here because of my experiences, because of my pain, right? I just don't know if AI can do that. And if they do, that's when we really have a problem. But I can appreciate the creativity in this, even feeding an artificial intelligence poetry, right? Because there's so many other things, right, to focus on. So one part, I appreciate that poetry is in it. Secondly, how about you just stay away from poetry?
Well, I think it's authenticity, isn't it? And you can feel when something's authentic or not. And exactly like you say, Elemental, if ultimately there isn't the emotion behind it, because if they might be writing about whatever experience it is, but they've not really experienced that. They've just experienced, like you say, the ones and zeros. I've not thought of it in those terms. But yeah, like poetry has to be authentic for it to have an emotional impact. I just don't see how this can be that. Exactly like you say, but more eloquently than me.
It's one of those things that I think that every person should pay attention to, because it's becoming more and more in what we do. Think about anytime you call someone, right? There's an artificial intelligence answering the call. Say, hey, I can help you. I can help you. I even understand your voice. Tell me what it is that you would like to know. But I think all of those things are learning opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's picking up on all those little nuances. So
Poetry written from a place that without emotion, programmed, and you program a soul. You know what? Thank you for your contributions, Heralds. It's a very good point. I think Elemental as well. You said that, like, if it doesn't feel pain, unfortunately, poetry is created from expression of that. It's trippy though. So I would welcome everyone to check out the video. It's on bbc.com, I believe. Yes, it's titled "Robot Artist Recites Its Poetry at Oxford Museum." And please comment your opinions as well. It's a big conversation. So what I gotta say about that. So thank you again, everyone. And for this week, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have Martin with close us out for another segment of the Poetry News.
So thank you everybody for watching. Again, we hope you enjoyed the links. We hope you found some stuff interesting, and we hope you found some good opportunities to go to submit to prompts for writing your poetry. That is everything we have for this week, but not everything we have at Poetry Global Network. We have the Poets React, we have the Poets Lighthouse, we have Breathe Poet, we have Bottoms Up, as well as the Poetry News. We're on all kinds of social media. We're doing loads of stuff all the time. And there's also new shows coming along pretty frequently. And Eddie has all of the social media links that you should totally follow.
Yes, thank you, Martin. You can check all of these shows and every news you need, every piece of information you need to know about our shows and everything we do at the BGN on our Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok. You can get to know us on TikTok. Actually, we have these fun little videos for you in which you can get to know us. So check everything out. All the links will be down below. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, give us some thumbs up, as people say, and make sure that you comment down below what you think about an AI writing poetry and reciting it. What do you think about this winter vibe kind of poetry writing and workshops and everything we discussed in this episode? I would like to thank my fellow Heralds. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Squigs. And of course, thank you again, Elemental, for filling in and for being a great Herald today. We will see you all next week. Have a nice one.
Take care, folks. Get better soon, Arson.